let's get started. Yvonne, thank you for joining us. What's your Montessori story? How did you discover Montessori?
So before I tell you my story, I want to thank you, Mark, for inviting me to the session. And I'd like to thank Montessori Australia, because I know that you guys are doing quite a lot of work that's not being seen. It's under the horizon. So thank you for that. My story is a fairly long one for many of these young faces that I see available around here. My story starts many years ago in Africa, when my daughter, who was 2.5, was enrolled in Montessori school. So that was 43 plus years ago. And now I'm in Australia and still in Montessori after changing from a medical field to educational. So a long story, but a very, very happy story, joyful story.
But how did you come across Montessori in South Africa?
It was interesting. I was working with children on a medical research project, and realized that when you looked at children, there were so many aspects that you could really enhance. And I decided that if I had children, I had to find an educational system that would look at children a little bit different to what I understood as education. That's when I started researching and found Montessori. So yes, it was a sideways adventure, but one that we looked at.
How many years have you been involved with Montessori now?
Well, you're trying to age me, Mark. I would say that I've been in Montessori for, as I said, at least 43 years.
Wow, 43.
Yep.
What have your various roles been in Montessori?
I started in a cycle 1, moved to cycle 2 when I first started working at Caboolture, and then finally went into cycle 3. I did both my AMI and the nursery training in South Africa. So yes, I did all the different age groups, and every time I was with one age group, I'd say, this is the favorite group. So it depends where you are and the children that you meet. It's an adventure every time, I would say.
How long have you been ahead of school at Caboolture?
Second time round, it's been now 16 years.
16.
Yeah. So nearly as long, well, just a little bit longer than Cara in her position.
What have you most loved about being a Montessori educator?
The results. When you look at children, when you see the community that you build between staff, parents, and children, I would say looking at what happens is the best thing that I've ever witnessed for my personal satisfaction. So I would say when you also see the growth of individuals, whether it be children or adults in a Montessori system, it's far different to a traditional system where I have worked in, and unfortunately would not want to ever go back to a traditional system. Yeah.
Did all your children go through Montessori?
My children both. I don't have that many. I have 2 amazing individuals. And they both went to Montessori in their primary years. But because the school eventually closed down, it was a very small rural school in Africa and literally survived thanks to parents' funding. We didn't have government funding in Africa for schools. So when that collapsed, then my children went to a traditional, normal, everyday school. They went to Sacred Heart College. So they were brought up with the foundation of Montessori, but then had to go to what everybody understands as traditional.
Did you notice changes in them when they switched from Montessori
Oh,
to traditional?
it was not so much me noticing the changes, but the staff in the schools who I associated with, because I worked in schools as well in those days. When, you know, there would be rules put in the school, there was always my daughter's hand up to try and understand the rules in her words.
Mm,
And she brought forward many changes that the staff then said, it's only your daughter that brings them up, and she's the Montessori student. It's respectful, but it's challenging. She used to challenge the adults.
always questioning authority.
Always,
Yeah.
always. Why do we need to stop a lesson because one of the students didn't bring an eraser to school?
Right.
We've got another 12 erasers. Let's just ask, you know, for somebody to give him the eraser and just get on.
That problem solving.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you had many challenges in your life as a Montessori educator? What would be some of the notable challenges?
Yeah, I guess the notable challenges historically have been making sure that in Montessori schools you have boards and staff that really work together. If you don't have that, because most Montessori schools are not massive schools, they're fairly small and quite, you know, prone to emotional backgrounds coming into the school and a lot of passion from everybody. So there were periods where the school could have been going better if all of those collaborative elements had worked well.
Mm.
The areas that I find still difficult today to work through or to navigate through are working with the demands from a country like Australia that puts the curriculum above any other element that we could work in a Montessori environment. So aligning continuously with the changes like right now is quite challenging for not just the heads of schools, but for everybody. It's challenging for the students, it's challenging for parents, and we're not going to even go towards where the staff have to manage all these changes, because for them it's an ongoing, continuous change of workload and normally additional workload. So that for me is one of the biggest challenges that we face in this country, that Montessori is still an outsider and we have to continuously prove what we're doing.
Mm. Even though the Montessori national curriculum has been adopted as one of the 4 alternative curriculums.
Well, I think we were one of the countries, thanks to math, that were able to have a national curriculum. I don't think that was ever done anywhere. And I think the reason for that was that we had to be approved by a CARA. The problem with that now is that CARA is becoming even more legislative, and I would imagine that pretty soon our curriculum is going to be questioned again, and how we align it then to whatever the new version will be interesting.
Yeah.
So
that's what we've been working on at Montessori Australia, is updating the curriculum and aligning it with version 9 of the ACE, and we'll be submitting that at the end of the month. So,
well, that's good to know, because I think all schools, not just in Queensland, but right throughout Australia, every principal has been working on aligning.
yeah. And then
learnings first, then with CARA, and now again version 9.
Yeah, and then our task after that will be to align it with state curricula, state standards, and unfortunate that we need to do that, but I think it's necessary, and it will be really helpful to have, instead of have a peak body do that, instead of having, you know, schools do it individually, everybody have to reinvent the wheel.
Yep. So I guess that would be one of my biggest challenge in the school, and the other one is, of course, having a learning management system that works with our Montessori in Australia and all the relevant reports that we have to provide.
Yeah. What were some of your most unforgettable moments as a Montessori educator?
I think it's such a difficult question to answer, because if I look back in all the years that I've been in Montessori, the most unforgettable events have always been to do with children.
Yeah.
For instance, I recall when our current school was still at its inception, we only had 18 students, and we had 2 adults, Annette Solomon and myself, managing the school. And at one stage, she was on one end of the room, I was on the other, and we had fairly challenging students at the time. And all of a sudden, there was dead silence in the whole space, and we both looked up, and the children were so engaged. We could have literally, which we then did, stand up and walk away, as we had read in the books, in Dr. Montessori's books. And the children would have been fine, and they would have been fine not just for 5 minutes, but for some time. They were so deeply engaged. So it's those kind of moments. Or now, when I see a staff member, you know, their aha moments, and they're just so excited, and how they deliver the curriculum, and how they look after our kids, those are memorable moments. They're not the big ones. The big ones are once off and they come and go, but those little episodes, which all educators in Montessori experience, are just unforgettable.
I have some photos from your school. Should we look at those?
So Mark, may I comment on some of these?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the photograph that you see in front of you is now slightly different because all the spaces underneath are full. We now have all our classes are built. We have 4 cycle 1s, 4 cycle 2s, and 4 cycle 3s, and a toddler group. So that building looks a little bit different with the infill underneath. And that's just the school when it's done. That's one of our ceremonies led by seniors. Library days. After one students. Montessori 2021, we improved on that 2022. So this is just 1 year late.
That's impressive.
And one of our beautiful days, multicultural day, where parents and children come dressed up and we celebrate our cultures. Just like all the Montessori schools, we have a variety of cultures, both in our staff and in the parent body. Special days in school.
Now your school went whitewater rafting?
Yes, they did.
Wow.
Our students in their final year of school are allowed to, well, not allowed, but we plan to take them on a mystery tour, or they go to Canberra. And because COVID has kind of closed us off, we haven't gone to Canberra, but we go on mystery tours. So they've gone to iFly, so they're doing suspended flying. They will go to various activities, and it just builds them up.
Wow, they look very young to be whitewater rafting. What was the youngest that went there?
Oh, they would be, you're looking at anywhere 12, 11, 12. These are the older kids.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
And this is still our multicultural day. This is a very particular photograph. The students have to work on entrepreneurship every year. And one of the projects that they did was this particular area that they sealed off in the school where everything was white, and they took on board a Japanese artist who actually puts dots on all the artwork. So they invited everybody in the school to come and visit, and each person visiting would be given a handful of dots, and they could stick them wherever they liked on the white surfaces. Just the students. We're playing with magnets.
Is that this year? No, that must be a previous year, right?
Yes, yes.
Do you have an open day coming up?
Yes, we do. It's in February, but you caught me unawares. I can't give you the exact date, but it's on our website. So if anybody's interested, all they need to do is go to our website.
So what advice would you have for young Montessorians coming into the profession now?
The most important thing is that you really identify your talents, what you're good at, what you like, what are your interests, and really expand on those, because first of all, that will get you to be really engaged and excited about what you bring to the children or to the school. But most importantly, that's a positive start, and that will take the children and the staff, if you're in leadership, onto a journey of being positive. So really identify what you're good at and see how you can bring that into your space. The next thing is don't stop learning. Just find any way to learn, both in the Montessori field and in education, if that's where your life is going to be. There's never enough knowledge for us in a Montessori environment, and we should never stop. Dr. Montessori was a researcher. Dr. Montessori was eclectic. She didn't say this is how it has to be and keep it as that. She wanted us to really explore. She wants the children to explore. So really look at how to expand your own horizons and find mentors, find very strong mentors to guide you on the way, both in Montessori and outside of Montessori. I know that my mentors were very strong ones, and out of the three mentors that have been in my course, four mentors, two were Montessori and two were not. Two were high business people, and I'm thankful to what they supported me with and how they would mentor my capacity. So if you can keep those thoughts alive and vibrant, you will be happier. Montessori is a big job. Whether you're working in any cycle, whether you're an assistant, whether you are an admin, whether you are leading a school, you've chosen big work. Like we say with the kids, this is big work. Well, any adult, any Montessori educator has chosen to do big work. It doesn't stop.
Have you noticed changes in the nature of the child, and then the nature of the maybe produced by changes in the family structure, or technology, or changes in nutrition in the years that you've been in education?
Yeah, your questions are really apt, Mark. The changes have been phenomenal. In the last 10 years, we're dealing with a completely different profile of adults and students. I'm finding the profile of the adults is improving. Parents are interested, parents want to know more, parents are more engaged. With children, I think there are elements that have started affecting how they learn. Technology is a big one. Technology's really taken over many of the activities that our children do as early as 15 months and even younger. The other thing is that parents are most of the time very busy. Parents are not able to sit at a table. When I ask my cycle threes how many of them sit at a table and have dinner with their parents, out of, I think it was 65, 3 students said that they sit at a table and have conversation with their parents. The rest don't. So when you ask a student to have a conversation, you actually have to teach them what dialogue is all about. So yes, the students have changed considerably. I'm not going to say all for the worst. It's just a different human being that we're dealing with. And as such, we need to acknowledge, recognize, and identify how to support them.
Do you think that there are changes? Do you think that Montessori is still as relevant now as it ever was for considering those changes? Or are there changes that we need to make in Montessori to update it to be as relevant?
Yes to both of those items in your questions. Yes, Montessori is more relevant now than it's ever been, absolutely ever been. When we look at chats, GTV, and all these new apps and all the mechanical learning that we're going to see in the future, that's Montessori. Montessori is explorative. Montessori is the future. We know that we can provide the skills, both adaptive skills and future required skills. So absolutely yes to your first question. I can't see any other education system that can do what Montessori can do for these students. Do we have to review how Montessori is presented and taught? 100%. 100%. We cannot, and I'm not saying throw out the baby with the water. Our presentations, our Montessori materials are unbelievably fantastic and should still be our go-to. But what we do need to look at is what else do we bring into the Montessori environment that we don't have yet, that the children are showing us they are going to be using. So we need to stick our head out there and not leave it in the sand and say, this is Montessori, this is what we're going to do because this is the way it's always been done. If we do that, Montessori will die. So no, it's time to do, again, as I said earlier, what Montessori did, and that is research, 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 and look at what children are telling us about the way they learn. So we need to look at blended education. We need to look at ways to make Montessori so exciting that our children want Montessori, but our parents don't leave us because the school down the road has offered a robotics that we haven't even thought about. So it's really about how do we market the most impressive tool that we have, which is what Dr. Montessori has left us. She's left us a pedagogy. She hasn't just left us materials. She hasn't just left us rules. She's left us a pedagogy that is unsurpassable in any other way.
Well, she was a fan of cutting edge technology. She was advocating the use of 16mm film by teachers in the classroom when that was still, a very new thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when we bring apps into the school and we teach children the how and the why before we give them the tools to use, we need to train, we need to understand it. And there's not many adults that fully understand this technology yet. So reach out, find people that can explain it to you, that can give you the goods and the bads of
Mhm.
all these new possibilities and options.
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest challenges faced by education in general now?
I think the question marks about what the future holds for education. You know, everybody talks about nothing that we know now will be the same in 20 years. Well, what will be? We need to look at what the futurists are talking about, because if we don't, we won't know what to do in our schools. We'll be left behind. And that ties into the previous question. I think the future's too unknown. The future's moving extremely fast, and I don't think it's moving extremely fast just for me, because I'm in a different age bracket. I think even the young people are saying, you know, we've got to keep up. It's just not the same as it was last year. So it's yes, the chess pieces are very different, and the board is different.
Yeah. It does seem like we need Montessori now more than ever, with the problems and the crises going on in the world. We need people who have a sense of the unity, the oneness of everything and the connections between people, instead of, you know, constantly focusing on divisions and so on that we hear in politics.
Yeah, I agree. I think politics destroying what could be. I mean, and I'm not even looking at Ukraine, wars that are happening. I think if you just go into our world, how our parents live today, there's a lot of litigation, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of really contradictory elements that are being thrown around. And I think COVID did a lot to bring us to where we are today, both positively and negatively, because during the time that people were isolated, they started reflecting, and what's come out of those reflections have been stress, have been tiredness, have been exhaustion, but it's also been an amazing amount of learning of ourselves and our context.
Yeah.
So COVID's really been quite a huge element of change in our life.
Yeah. So why do you think Montessori is not better known than it is in, after 115 years or so in Australia? Why is it still only 0.5% of schools? Why do we serve only 0.012% of children? If we're going to give life to Montessori's dream of reforming society from within, we'd need probably at least 50% of schools to be Montessori.
Yeah, I think, and by no means am I, expert on the matter, but my belief is that we've got to understand that Montessori is not cheap. So when you're looking at setting up a Montessori school, you're really looking at a considerable amount of money. That's step one. The other problem is that people feel what they don't know. And Montessori is not love. I'm just going to turn on the lights because I can see it's getting dark. Hello again. So you're looking at a world that people don't understand. And unfortunately, when you read about Montessori, it seems to always start off with Montessori looked after deficient children. So Montessori still has the stigma that we are a special school. I'm sure that for every person that's sitting here tonight at this meeting, if I had to ask the leaders of the schools, how many students are you getting with special needs and how many are you getting gifted or just average students? I'm sure the number of students with needs is extremely high. And that's because parents still put Montessori as a special school. So we've got to change that stigma, we've got to change that parameter. How do we do it? We should do it as a group in putting out information of achievements that our students can get through and the research that's available. There's very little research. The research needs to show achievements of students even going forward. It's no good just bringing out the survey and Amazon guys or Google guys. That's all good and well, but that's one or two or three. We've got hundreds and thousands of students coming out of Montessori schools who are doing impressive things. Whether they become a hairdresser, whether they become the top teacher in maths in a high school because those are their preference. The students themselves are individuals that are so well adjusted, so competent in whatever they choose to do. So the research, and that's what we need to put out there for our schools to be looked at differently and understood as a real academic strength.
Do you think people really listen to data though? Do you, I've always thought that what really convinces the general public is a good story. And there has never been a big blockbuster movie about Montessori's life. And so people don't know her. She's not a family, she's not a household name yet because that story hasn't sort of seeped into the general culture yet.
You're right, it's very possible. But I think today, and that's what I was saying, when parent profile has changed, I think parents are looking at data. They do want to know, they want a happy child. When you ask them, what does a happy child look like? It's generally, they've achieved really well. They can do anything they want. And so that for me translates into what the saying is your child has to be academically strong. And I'm not saying we've got to forget all the other holistic areas that go with that. But parents are definitely looking at data. So I think it's both. You're right when you say it needs to be, the story has to change out there and it has to be made available to many people in different circumstances. But I think also data talks.
Yeah. If you were going to recommend a book for politicians to read or parents to help them understand Montessori or education in general or the nature of the child, what would it be?
I know I'm going to be a little sacrilegious here because the book I would recommend to anybody to start the journey in Montessori wasn't written by Dr. Montessori. Now, I'm Italian, and when I read a book in Italian, I can tell you they are amazing. When I see them translated, I get a little frustrated because a lot of it just doesn't gel 100%. But anyway, the book that I would recommend to newcomers in Montessori would be Maria Montessori, Her Life and Work by E.M. Standing, because it gives a big picture of who she was, what she did, and all the basic elements that are inclusive in our pedagogy. To people that are coming into leadership in Montessori, because my call now to anybody here tonight is we need more leaders, we need more principals, we need more CEOs to start talking in Montessori.
Yeah.
Our teachers are doing a phenomenal job, but unfortunately they're stuck in the classroom. We need leaders, and the books that I would recommend for those people are Motion Leadership, which is by M. Fulham, Power Score, Your Formula for Leadership Success, and just a life slightly lighter side, and I would suggest that to anybody working in Montessori, because as I said, we do big work every day, is Who Moved My Cheese? And I think everybody should read that, because we really need to stop stressing about the big stuff, because Montessori's always got big stuff. And that's where a lot of conflict comes in, because we tie on to that instead of coming back to why are we here? We're here for these kids. How many successes have we had today? We're not. So let's work from there where we go. So those are the books that I would recommend. Love. So maybe it's disappointing that I'm not saying the absorbent mind or discovering the child or any of those. But I think Montessori books really are compartmentalized in some way.
Yeah.
And depending on the adult, I would recommend the book. But if you give them a whole idea of the impressiveness of this woman, of the giftedness of this woman, who still amazes me every day,
Yeah.
that would be better.
Yeah. Well, her books are not easy to read for the general reader, I guess,
No,
especially in English, in the translation, as you point out.
yeah, they come across as like some of them grammatically incorrect, but also it just doesn't gel always. Whereas when you read it in Italian, it's not just your mind that gets blown away, it's your soul that really gets into it. It's impressive.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges faced by Montessori in Australia, the Australian Montessori movement?
Cohesion, unity. We need to turn off egos and rather look at survival in Australia and sustainability, because what we could land up with is Montessori leaders becoming disengaged with Montessori entities. And I can tell you, sitting with many principals, the question often comes up, should we call our school something different to Montessori, and maybe we'll get what we want and move on. So there's always that sustainability issue that's been there for quite a few years. So if Montessori wants to survive in this country, it needs to have unity. It needs to have people getting together and just saying, let's do it together. We're too small. We have too many entities trying to steer the boat.
But that seems to be an issue with Montessori everywhere, like even the United States, very divided, 15 major organizations in the United States.
The people there, Mark, the numbers that we're talking about are much higher.
Yeah.
You know, Australia doesn't have that. As you said earlier, we're a small community.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to be divided.
Yeah.
We have hundreds of thousands of people, even if you have 2, 3, 4 organizations, you've still got enough capacity to get somewhere. We don't have that.
What do you think it is about Montessori that seems to engender that kind of division, though, where we have several organizations worldwide that don't seem to be able to work together to push Montessori forward? Like even Steiner, for example. Steiner, there are fewer schools, Steiner schools in Australia than Montessori schools, but they have a bigger presence because they're unified. They have a single peak body that is unified and is able to approach politicians. They have a very clear message. What is it about Montessori that promotes this disunity?
And this is my opinion again. I want to state that very clearly. I believe that we're too liberal and we have too many ideas, and we don't have, I'm not going to say tyrannical, but certainly somebody that says, no, this is what everybody's going to do. This is what we're about. And it's going to sit under these principles. Montessori is not patented. It's a free-for-all. So it comes down to everybody's interpretation. Everybody wants their ideas to be heard. Everybody wants to lead in their own manner. But what's at the very bottom of that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It just feels like when you go to Spa, as you said, they sit, the whole of Australia sits under one body.
Mm.
And they have very clear rules that nobody is debating, and it's not open for debate.
Yeah. So is it similar to the issue that you talked about earlier with your daughter who went to traditional school and questioned, excuse me, do I have to read chapter 13? Could I read? Questioning the rules all the time. Do we encourage this kind of, do we attract this kind of adults in Montessori that is always questioning and wanting to buck the system?
Possibly. I mean, it's a huge question, and it'd be interesting to get everybody's point of view and then to collate that information to see what everybody thinks. But it's always, if you look at schools, that's what I've said earlier, schools are very fragile because you have a board that's very strong today, but because we're quite open and we are happy to have our parents on the board and we foster this kind of openness, boards implode and then the school suffers. So if you look at that microcosm compared to Australia and Montessori, it's a very similar situation.
Yeah.
You've got to have very strong people that want the same goals, that aim for the same goals, that are happy to walk down a path, and for everybody to feel that they are heard, but ultimately there's no decision being made.
Well, you've certainly modeled that strong, decisive leadership at CMS for so long.
Well, I think, again, if you had to say to me what's the most important thing for a leader, and I can tell you, unless, apart from having many talents, many, which I don't have all, but many skills, and you have to improve on the skills, you've got to build culture. That's the job of a leader. You've got to build culture. What's the culture that you want in your environment? You have to role model that culture. You have to really pull up people that are not producing the same culture, because if they're not following what you know is holding your school together, it's going to fall apart. And so it's a big job to do, because you've got to hire the right people. You've got to train yourself, because we are all very different. So, yeah.
Have you, in your leadership of the school and your life previously as a Montessori educator, how have you managed the work-life balance? You've stayed fresh for so long. It's so easy to stop, especially as a leader. It's so easy to burn out. I think the tenure of many Montessori school leaders is quite short.
Yeah. It's not easy, but I know that you have to set again very clear limits in your own life, and that is Friday when I leave school, unless there's an emergency, I don't want people to contact me. So my life on the weekend is supposed to be my life, and yes, you'll have the odd situation, but I really try very hard to have that space for me and for my family and for my friends. But to be very honest with you, Mark, it's not very good. Life balance, I don't know many Montessorians that will honestly tell me that they've got it down pat. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It just is. it's consuming. It becomes your identity,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And no matter how people say to you, but just don't worry, it'll happen. We'll do it. You are totally invested, and so you want to see it happen.
Yeah. Speaking of that, one of the most challenging aspects of being a Montessorian is that transformation, that spiritual transformation. That's so hard to achieve in training programs. What do you think the secret is of that personal transformation of the teacher?
The trainers have to have it. The trainers need to be very aware. I've been trained both AMI and Mercy, and I was very, very fortunate to have Lillian O'Brien as my trainer. She was amazing in her own right, as well as trying to teach us Montessori. I've been through Montessori training through other entities, and they've not been the person that they want us to become. And so the role modeling is so, so important when you're trying to instill in somebody what Montessori is about. It has to be part of who you are as the person transferring the knowledge. That's not always easy, because as if you are a teacher and you're training and you're sharing information, you have to get through certain quota lessons or whatever. So it's not always straightforward to actually source those elements that then lead into real spiritual understanding of what we're doing. So yeah, I think not everybody is a Montessori teacher. Not everybody is a Montessori leader. It's like not every child is a Montessori child.
It's so true. Modeling is such an important part of it.
Yep.
Do you think Montessori can save the world? Do you see signs of hope?
I wish I could say yes to that. I wish I could say yes to that. I believe that every day we're doing a little bit in every school. And so we just need to keep going and really know that you've made a difference for 1 or 2 or 3, 400 children. But just that one, I'm going to give an example because it will always stay in my mind. We had a student that came to us at the age of 8 and could not read, could not write, was hiding under tables, was obviously really battling all kinds of learning difficulties and emotional difficulties. When he left at the end of cycle 3, he realized that we were there for him and we wanted the best that he could give. He could read and write by the time he left us. It was legible. He was not going to be an engineer, but he became what he was desperate to become, and that was a bull rider. And when he left a year later, he sent me a photograph on his prize bull, and he said he would never forget that we believed in him. That is enough to say, we've done it for one child, let's keep doing it for many.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
An inspiring story. Does anybody else have a question for Yvonne? Any comments or questions?
I can jump in, Mark.
Sure.
Hi, Yvonne. I don't think we've met. I'm Alex, and I just have a question around the curriculum. And you talked about the challenges with that in terms of the mapping. Can you outline what those challenges are for schools and teachers? I mean, I worked in a school for many years in New South Wales, and I know some of those challenges, but I'm just wondering if you could outline them, just as because I'm working with the team in trying to address some of those challenges. So
Yeah, I guess for me, what I'm noticing that the challenges are really relevant is that ACARA and ISQ, Independent Schools Queensland, have made it very clear that we have to meet those outcomes. Now, when you look at our curriculum is not based on an outcome per se. The materials lend themselves to many outcomes during the lessons that you provide the students. So if I take the stamp game, for instance, the stamp game can give me static dynamic addition, static dynamic subtraction. I can do multiplication on there. How many outcomes am I going to meet with that? So when you're putting it down on paper or a learning management system, where do you put all of that? There are management systems that give you all the materials and give you all the lessons. They're not aligned in a specific way to ACARA, so the teachers have to do all that extra work. And what they do then, they're saying, oh, have I covered this outcome? No, I haven't. I better go back and what materials do I need to use, rather than saying, this is my child that I've got in front of me. I'm going to do the lessons in sequence as I have them on the shelves, because my shelves are my spoken sequence. So when you look at paperwork and what happens in the classroom, to get those two to connect, for me, that is very relevant because we have to do it, but it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, and I'd agree that that challenge falls very much on teachers as well, and causes a tension in that classroom.
Exactly. And that's where, as leaders, we've got to try and find a way to make it easy for them. If they've got enough to do, they shouldn't be.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And part of that, I agree, is not just about the practicalities of alignment, but it's also about advocacy as well. You know, it's another level, which is, you know, educating the powers that be and helping them to feel assured that this is what we do. We know what we're doing, and there's a continuum. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
But having maybe a couple of Montessorians on the ACARA board and talking to them when they are busy setting out the curriculum and saying, oh, fancy that, this is how we would do it. Instead of having 3 outcomes and 3 of them that are saying the same thing in a slightly different manner, we can do that in one go. And we actually have lessons for that. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yvonne, it's been so interesting chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. It's
my pleasure. And I want to thank all the people that have joined us for this talk, because after a busy day at school and busy day with kids and whatnot, thanks to you all, and don't stop your Montessori journey. It's worth every minute of heartache and love and fun and all of it. Thanks for your dedication to Montessori, Yvonne. Good night, everybody. Thanks. Good night, everybody.